Trusted AI Adoption from Hype to Impact by KJR.
G'day, it's Drew here. So I'm a general manager with KJR. In today's episodes, we're speaking to three of our colleagues that we've worked with through 2025, just looking retrospectively back at 2025 through the lens of AI and trusted and responsible AI to see what they saw, what surprised them, and also have a look forward into 2026 and see what the predictions are. I really enjoyed the chat with all three of the crew. So Brook from Delos Delta, Tony from the ACCS, and Ian from the ABPA. Three different perspectives and quite interesting, and suffice to say I really enjoyed each of the conversations, so hopefully you'll enjoy them too, and catch you on the next one. Just like to take a moment to say welcome to Brook. He's the managing director of Delos Delta and is joining us for what will be our first VDML podcast for 2025, and the way we're going to run the first couple of podcasts like this is to sit down with folks and to look back at 2025 to see what happened in this whole world of AI. And I guess with that, I might just kick off with our first question just to start the convo. Was there anything that surprised you in the AI space in 2025?
Thanks, Andrew. Pleasure to be talking to you today. And I should just let the listeners know that in terms of my view of the world, Delos Delta, we're management consultants that work with a range of clients, but very much with government and particularly with local government in Australia, certainly state and the federal government as well, but do a lot of work with local government. So just to provide some scope for this discussion, I'll probably mostly frame my questions around local government. Because I feel that that's where we've got the sort of the deepest and purest view, if you will. So, if you don't mind, we'll start there. We can range more broadly, but I sort of feel that there are many people who can speak about this topic, and I don't want to cover a global view when I might reach some points where my views aren't as deep as others. In any case, so when it comes to this sort of government view, Andrew, and particularly in local government, what surprised me? Well, I mean, lots of things continue to surprise me in this dynamic world, but I feel that, from a public policy perspective and a government perspective, particularly a local government perspective, I was still a little bit surprised by the number of entities that were a little bit slow off the mark with their governance of AI. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not one of these people that is all about let's govern technology and let's try to control it and let's stymie innovation. I mean, I'm a former executive in government responsible for red tape reduction, for smart cities, and for innovation. So I certainly appreciate the balance between, governing, controlling, managing, mitigating risk, but also supporting and allowing innovation. And in that framework, in that context, Andrew, I still felt that there was a lot of local government entities that were a little bit laissez-faire, let's say, and blasé about AI, and not really appreciating that it's quite new, it's very dynamic. There are lots of obvious risks that are emerging. But there's also a lot of risks that perhaps we don't know about yet. So in that context, and certainly as a former government executive, I would have felt that adding a short, targeted, sensible AI governance document to your broader governance and risk management framework would be a very sensible step for any government entity. And I did see that some entities were a bit slow off the mark. Some were taking a lot longer than I would have expected. Our view is that certainly should just be a matter of get something in place as quick as possible, test it, try it, see if it works, refine, improve, enhance, increase control, reduce control from there. But don't sort of dilly-dally, shilly-shally around. Let's just get it done so that we can do good things with AI, Andrew. So there's my answer to your question number one.
Yeah, no, definitely. And as a software testing professional and quality professional, I love the thing that surprised you was around governance, because all too often I think what we see is that people sort of maybe cowboy is the right term for it, but just go and implement something and then wait for something to break or someone to scream before they think about governance. So I think that that's a great way to start. And I think that also too, even there was this morning, so we were recording just after Australia Day, the New South Wales government have just updated their assurance policies in AI to which is about 12, maybe 12 to 18 months since they previously did. So it's good to see that there's a realization that things are changing, and just setting and forgetting is not ideal. And I wonder, just sort of, if we sort of dive into that frameworks piece, and curious of your opinion is, do you think that in some cases where we're not taking AI or either the opportunity or risk of AI seriously enough, because let's face it, I mean, we're using a product to record this that's already inbuilt with AI in it, and so AI has kind of crept into most elements and most sort of facets of our lives without sort of turning the switch on and stuff like that. I wonder, interested in your thoughts, is that are we underplaying the risk of AI, or are we overplaying the risk of AI, and therefore how much governance is required or should be required?
Well, it's a good question, Andrew. I think it depends on who you ask. I mean, I think there's certain elements and certain people that are probably being too risk averse, and conversely, there are others who are more risk loving, and in fact, very laissez-faire, and sort of let's leave it at the Wild West and let 1,000 flowers bloom. So I think it's a variegated marketplace in terms of what's the correct approach for AI. Certainly in government, though, I feel that one of the impulses that allows probably AI to be active in a way that's potentially not as governed as it should be is a sense that this is just a way of breaking down bureaucracy and breaking down inefficiency that has plagued my entire life and my entire career. Therefore, this is what we've been waiting for. This is what we've been praying for, and finally, it's here. Now, that's fair enough in many respects, but also we've got to remember that in government, the reason bureaucracy exists is innately because it is about slowing things down slightly. It is about realizing that it is a complex place. It is a complex set of objectives and conflicts that need to be dealt with. And sometimes bureaucracy, control, regulation, governance is a way of ensuring that we stay on the road, we stay on the tracks, we're not crashing the car, and we're not hurting people unnecessarily or heedlessly. So I do fear that there is a slight impulse in government to sort of say, oh, yes, finally, we can move fast and break things. And it's like, yeah, be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for, because it all might work very well for a certain amount of time until something does break and you end up on the front page of the Canberra Times or the Sydney Morning Herald or the Age or the Australian. And then, and only then, will you wish that potentially you had taken a little bit more of a cautious approach. Now, again, I'm not trying to say we need to just stop good things and fantastic things, innovation and testing and trialing with AI happen. I'm just suggesting that, until sometimes things go in the wrong direction, people don't see the value of governance and don't see the value of risk management. And I think in these, we're not in the early stages. Of course, AI has been around for many, many years and indeed decades, but we're sort of still in that very early stage of, the hype and the excitement being high, potentially capability being low, and therefore there's a sense that, we haven't seen too many massive instances of AI gone wrong. That's going to change.
Yeah, definitely. So no, I think that's that's very quite insightful there in terms of how do we navigate and how do we do it. And obviously we've got a bent for doing things in a trusted and responsible manner, as I think most people are kind of from a social license pace. I think that most organizations, while there's only very few that have that ability to go fast and break stuff and not suffer for it, whereas I think the rest of the population, we need to be approaching these things in a safe and measured manner, but not necessarily too slow, because I think that at some point the opportunity cost of not embracing some of the advances is going to be equally high as it is to go and having rushed in and having something that you've got to then wind back. So I think it's going to be definitely an interesting position, this one. And I guess sort of the next point that I had to discuss, which sort of flows on quite nicely from there, is of what you saw in 2025 and from the clients you've worked with, what's the either the best implementation or best use that you've seen for an AI-enabled system, during 2025?
Well, Andrew, I mean, there's many. I mean, again, I'll go to government because again, they're our main
Yeah.
client base, and I think that's hopefully a bit of some slight point of distinction for this podcast or video cast versus the many other fantastic interviews you're having. But certainly in government, what I'm liking that happened in 2025 and will continue, and it's been happening for years before as well, is the application of AI to sort of asset management and services as well. So a couple of examples, a lot of local governments are more and more using AI to sift through their waste collection to understand compliance with what should be in the waste, whether it's being recyclables or green waste or general waste. The AI tools are proving very, very useful in understanding what's actually being put into waste and if people are doing the right thing, because of course the rules about what should go in which bin change constantly. So AI is just one effective tool of rapidly testing the data that we have there. Also, with our stormwater systems and drains and all the pipes underneath the ground, a lot of local governments are starting to more and more use the data that they collect from those pipes, including video footage, using AI tools and platforms to get a better appreciation about, what are some of the maintenance issues down there, what are some of the areas where some proactive intervention is required. Obviously, that's really important because these things under the ground are often hidden, but they're certainly very costly. And if things go wrong down there, that's no good as well. Another example, Andrew, is more and more local governments are starting to use AI to look at some of the footage that they're collecting from their various vehicles, be they council vehicles, be they waste collection vehicles, or be they some sort of state vehicle, to understand the nature of the condition of their roads, and again to start to optimize, proactive maintenance, their infrastructure schedules and so forth. Now these have significant positive consequences in terms of just being able to sift through data in new and interesting ways that we haven't been able to do in the past. And of course, that has very real consequences for how budgets are allocated, how much money we're saving, and of course, the conditions of roads, the conditions of our pipes and drains under the roads and under the ground. And indeed, making sure that the waste that we're throwing out is actually going into the right bin. All very sensible, good use cases, Andrew. So there's some really positive things in terms of use cases, and there's many, many more like that. In terms of an entity that I felt has taken a really sort of positive and effective approach to engaging with AI, the City of Glen Eira in Melbourne, Andrew, we feel has taken a very, very strong, proactive and positive approach. Certainly, we were working with them indeed to have very open, transparent conversations right across the organisation to not only understand what should be the high value use cases that they should be investing in, but also to actually understand the risks that people are seeing and some of their reservations and concerns. Some of the things, for example, that people were saying was that we worry that AI could actually atrophy or diminish our human capital. All right, and we are seeing many academic studies would actually show that with over reliance on AI as humans can actually reduce your critical thinking skills and so forth and so on. And that's a very real and live concern. And it was great to sort of see people communicate that and then have an open conversation about, right, how do we use AI in a really sensible, powerful way that's good for council, that's good for the community, but also ensure that we're protecting, enhancing, and building our human capital skills, because that's not just important for our workforce now and into the future. It's also important for people's sort of sense of well-being and sense of satisfaction with work. And at the end of the day, let's be honest, AI is here for people, for humanity, for the planet. And if the use of AI is sort of not making people feel great about themselves or feel like they're diminishing their skills, that's a problem, and one we need to take seriously as well, Andrew. So there's a couple of examples of great use cases, but also an example of an organisation that's taking a very strategic and direct and proactive approach to embedding and accelerating sensible use of AI in their organisation.
Yeah, no, there's a couple of great examples in there, and I think it's as you sort of alluded to, if we can use AI-enabled systems to give our people and our staff or our constituents, in this instance, sort of superpowers to be able to do more with less, then I think that's that's got to be in essence, that's why we want it, or that's why we wanted AI, is to be able to to take some of that heavy lifting and the dull and the boring tasks that people often have to do, and then we're just by human nature we're like, oh well, that's not the most fun task, so we'll either leave it to be done later on or do a substandard job on it that then has ramifications. So I think they're definitely great examples. And I love that actually the garbage example. I think we had that here in the ACT actually. So over the Christmas period, we put our bins out as we normally do, and then when we pulled them in, they had a little tag where someone had been through. I didn't see it happen, so I don't know whether it was an AI assisted mechanism, but someone had been through just to check what was in the recycling bin to make sure it met the requirements, and we got a green tick, which was great, and it very much surprised my daughter, because I'd said to her plenty of times, you can't just chuck a plastic bag inside a cardboard box and then all of a sudden it's recycling. She's like, oh, Dad, whatever. I said, people check it, and she's sort of dismissed me as most teenagers do. And then when this little tag appeared on the bin that said that we'd done the right thing, she was very impressed. That she's like, I didn't realize people did that. So I think it's a piece that if we can make that process even more efficient, as an example, then that'll benefit everyone. Because otherwise, what's the point in this particular instance if you're taking the effort to sort the recycling and then that's not being actually actioned at the other end? Then people will sort of get to your point, get a bit despondent, and why are we doing this and stuff like that. So if we can make sure that the advances that we're seeing in computer vision and real-time sort of edge processing, all this stuff can actually happen at literally on the garbage truck as it's either probably proactively picking it up before it dumps it, then that saves a heap of time and is more efficient for our constituents. So I think that's a great use case, and the more of that we can see, the better.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so the next sort of point I wanted to discuss, and I think we've probably already discussed it a little bit, was if you'd seen any change in sort of originally I put the global landscape, but if we just narrow down onto to local government, sort of seeing changes in either the attitudes of the constituents and or the local governments towards AI and embracing it. I think we've already sort of touched on it, but I wondered if there was any particular things that stood out for you in 2025 as there was a particular shift in ...
Yeah, well, I think it's becoming. I mean, honestly, I think it's just becoming more mainstream, let's say, Andrew. So in the past, I feel that AI activity was happening sort of beneath the surface, almost black ops, if you will. So there was a little bit of a sense of, oh, this is all new, and we're the sort of the leaders, we're the early adopters, and there's no real rules here at the moment, so we can kind of just do what we want. And it's kind of happening in various pockets in a very innovative, fast-moving, non-visible sort of way. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not necessarily saying it's a good thing, but that's sort of what I observed over the last year. It's certainly become something that executives are more interested in. They're more interested in it being transparent. They're more interested in it being governed. They're more interested in bringing it into traditional frameworks and policies and strategies. So rather than it become something that's sort of innovative and out there and different and new and a little bit sort of beyond the realm of sort of our level of control, it's actually within the organisation, and it has that sort of mandate, has that imprimatur, and that of course has good and bad implications. Obviously, it means that people have to go a bit slower, and perhaps they can't be sort of as innovative, and they can't sort of play around as much. But it also does mean that there's greater levels of sort of support, accountability, resourcing, and therefore you've kind of got the organisation behind you, which ultimately I think is a good thing. And I've seen this over many years. Similarly, Andrew, that we've done a lot of work in the smart city space. More than 100 strategies right across Australia, and certainly over the last 10 years of dealing in the smart city space, it's the same trajectory where in the past it was kind of like, it's just these really smart, innovative early adopters who are playing around with smart tech. Now it's kind of it's baked into the fabric of the organisation. It's woven into the fabric of the organisation, And that means that you've kind of got more formality and you've kind of got more mandate, but you've also got more transparency and more accountability. So that's sort of, to me, what I'm seeing, Andrew. I know that there'll be people who say, "Oh, that's really bad." We want actually it to, still to sort of be roaming free and bubbling along, and sort of just, things happening and people sort of free to, to do whatever they want with it, with AI. I don't think so. As a public policy expert, as a former government executive, I think at the end of the day, you want things to be mainstream. You want things to be baked into the organisation, into its governance, into its regulations, because that's when real stuff happens. And that's when you get the power of the organisation and the power of the public sector actually behind AI. So I think it's a net positive. I think it's a net positive, and I think it's inevitable. And I've been really pleased to see that over the last 12 months, to sort of it become more centre stage and sort of, I suppose, more part of the one of the main characters, let's say, rather than somebody who just sort of runs around in the background in the dark, coming on and off stage.
Yeah, nice. So, and you mentioned I was going to sort of a segue into the smart city space. I mean, you've been operating in that for for a while now. Are you, I don't know, frame it. So, like pre-COVID, smart cities, and particularly in Australia, I think had some momentum, but was sort of struggling to sort of fully demonstrate the benefits, I think, of what a smart city could offer. Do you think now, sort of, 5-6 years into the future, that the promise of smart cities plus the advances we've had in AI, because essentially smart cities is about collecting lots of data from sensors and then being able to analyze that to make sort of smart or better informed decisions. Do you think there's sort of a nexus there where we've got this convergence of all of the good preparatory work that we did with smart cities, and now if you can sort of put a layer of AI and data management and data maturity over it, so now we'll be able to deliver collectively on the promise of smart cities?
Yeah, definitely, Andrew. Absolutely. I mean, the interesting thing about all of this is that a lot of the things that we now say, it's a lot of it's about branding, right? So AI is the flavor. AI is it's the show. I mean, you look on LinkedIn, it's pretty much 95% of posts are about AI and this, that, and the other, right? So all those particular those use cases I spoke about previously, they've been bubbling along for a number of years, all right? And in the past, they've been happening, but we probably more describe them as smart city, digital city programs and projects and investments, right? Now we call them AI because that's how they'll sell. That's how we get, that's how we get clicks. That's how we get likes. That's how we get people to listen to our podcast, right? Now, the AI element was there. It was there, but we probably called it software. We probably called it algorithms. We probably called it an app. It was still AI as we define it as today, but we just weren't emphasizing it as much. So there's that aspect too of sort of narrative, branding, positioning, and sort of the natural trajectory and the waves of technology, not only technology, but the jargon that we apply to technology. But going back to your question, I think ultimately, yes, the advances in artificial intelligence naturally complement all of the smart city technologies we've been talking about now for 10, 20 years. So the obvious example is that, with smart street lighting and street poles, which include potentially, CCTV, you've got a fantastic array of data there that's being collected. And the advances in artificial intelligence allow us to analyze it more quickly, to come up with better insights, and insights that are more aligned, I suppose, with decision-making cycles and decision-making, I suppose, feasibility for organisations and individuals that are responsible for those assets and the associated services that they deliver. So, I think it's a fantastic sort of accelerator, complement, and affirmer of the sort of things we've been talking about for the last couple of years. I don't care if we call it AI. I don't care if we call it smart tech. To me, it's all innovation, improvement, and enhancement in how we deliver and manage public assets and public services. So yes, I think they come together quite nicely, Andrew. I don't think it means that smart tech is out of date and it's out of vogue and it's it's all gone. It's the past. We need to move on. I think AI is an enhancer of that, and it's sort of like a further manifestation and complement to that world, which I think it's very positive and it's very exciting, Andrew.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's where those who are probably sort of toiling away, seeking funding and doing the projects and sort of setting all that infrastructure up is now is that they'll be able to collect on what they've done and then enhance and take it to the next level. So yeah, keen to see how that plays out. And I guess leads perfectly into sort of the last question for that I had noted was sort of, do you have any predictions for 2026 in terms of the things that you'd like to see or that you think will sort of bubble up into the fore?
Well, look, I mean, plenty of things I'd like to see, Andrew. Far be it for me to sort of impose my what I think should happen, what I think ought to happen to what will happen. But I mean, I'd like to see, for example, there to be sort of a greater sort of awareness and commitment to sort of disclosure in the use of AI, whether it's simply for the use of written material. For example, I feel that a lot of the internet is worse for wear for the ubiquitous and widespread use of AI in terms of writing. I think that there's a formula and a template there that's actually making the internet actually quite unbearable for someone who likes to read. So even disclosing that would be something useful. But just more generally, if you're using AI through decision-making processes, through the management of your assets, through the management of your services, if you're a public company, a private company, I feel like we should have a general and stronger commitment to disclosure, and then let the market decide. An obvious example of that, just a little bit of a side issue, but you would have seen, Andrew, a lot of instances of AI created music being trotted out on Spotify and other music sharing apps without any disclosure at all that it's AI, and also making a lot of money. And that to me, I think, is spurious and a distraction because part of the attraction of music is that there's someone behind it, there's a character, there's a human. So I don't care if people want to listen to AI generated music, but again, I think it's about being transparent. Let's disclose that this is AI. This is AI generated. Now, perhaps I'm an outlier there. Perhaps might be considered a Luddite for those views. Anyway, so I'd like to see more disclosure, Andrew.
Yeah.
But what do I think will happen? I also think, and again, I don't want to be too negative, but I think we are going to see a few more instances of the use of AI potentially going wrong, and there being negative implications, and there being stories on the front pages of newspapers about where the use of AI has gone wrong. And now that's a natural consequence of it becoming more ubiquitous, of us testing and trialing. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, and I'm not trying to black hat AI at all. Far from it. I just think it's going to be a consequence of us becoming more confident with using it, and perhaps us not fully understanding what are the appropriate governance models for using it. So there are going to be examples of AI going bad, and that will be useful examples for the rest of us to follow, and will be salutary lessons that for us to all learn from. So there's two things, Andrew. We could go on and on about what might happen, what ought to happen in 2026 and beyond, but there's two things that have been on my mind, and certainly, I think, we've seen examples of where AI has potentially not delivered on its promise. Reports, for example, being written by AI that wasn't disclosed, and then it wasn't correct. There was hallucinations, there was incorrect references. It wasn't up to speed. We've already seen that on the front page of newspapers. That's happened. We've already seen examples of where companies have aggressively gone out with an AI strategy, and then their efficiency targets turn out to be all imaginary, or indeed they're getting some pushback from real people who they'll ultimately be the judges of AI and if it's useful or not useful. So, we already have examples of that. I think there's going to be more of that, Andrew. So not a some sort of Nostradamus prediction at all. I think pretty much Blind Freddy could say that. But again, considering the theme of this podcast and me being more government oriented, that I think is a worthy prediction just to note, and just to remind us all that let's get excited by it, let's use it, let's do good things with it, let's try not to do dumb things as well. because nobody wants to end up on the front page of a newspaper, even though it's going to happen. And, you know, hopefully there'll all be lessons for the rest of us to learn from. And, you know, and there go I, but for the grace of God, Andrew. I also don't want to be there, but I can't guarantee I won't be.
No, that's right. I think we're yeah, I do love that as the sort of the balancing argument. So everything's going to be rose in, and it's like, oh, actually, when we're trying these trying new and emerging tech, but we're not quite focused on it, there is that possibility or probability that things will go wrong. So if you're not approaching your implementations or your the testing and trialing that you're doing with sort of an open and balanced mind, then that could end up being not as positive as it everyone might make out. So I think it's
one other thing I'd say too, Andrew, I think what I'd like to see and what I think we will see is sort of AI sort of being used as a bit of a test for the value of a process. Where AI works really well is in mindless bureaucracy, right? At the moment, like again, I'm not trying to limit it. There's fantastic things that it do. I'm not, but in a lot of the use cases, particularly in government, for example, through recruitment processes, right? Right now we're seeing AI write all the applications, right, from one end, and on the other end, probably AI is reading it all and summarizing it all. Now, that tells me as a former executive in charge of red tape reduction that the process is badly designed. If we can just get machines to do one thing on one end, write something on one end, and then a machine to write on the other end, well, we're basically writing humans out of the process. It says to me it's mindless bureaucracy, it's mindless process. So I think AI is intrinsically a great detector of bureaucracy and poor process, and therefore is a great way of a great signal for where we can do better in designing our services, designing our processes, designing our regulations, so that we can they can be more meaningful. They can be more meaningful, and they can get the outcome we want. Where we're just inserting AI as a way of just making bureaucracy more efficient, I think we can do better than that. So that's something else that I think people will start to sort of see more clearly on, Andrew, in terms of 2026 and beyond.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I think again, it's not at all what I thought in terms of what I thought some of the responses would be when I started to ask these questions. But I think that's it's great. Love it. It's
I hope I haven't given you the wrong answers there, Andrew. But I mean, I'm just one person with perhaps wild and different opinions. But again, that's all part of it. I think we need to be talking about AI. I think we need to have that dialogue and that discourse. And I think that there's certainly a tendency, I've seen it over many, many years of looking in the technology space, of being scared to be the Luddite, being scared to be the person who's the dumb person, being scared to be the person, the naysayer, being scared to be the person that is on the wrong side of history. I don't think it hurts to ask hard questions and to sort of say, oh, hang on a second, does that make sense? Because we need to be in control of this, right? We certainly can't let the AI create the AI to benefit the AI. Last time I looked, AI was sort of the whole aim was to be created by humans to benefit humans and our planet and each other and the world. So I don't think it hurts to ask the questions and perhaps to see things differently as a human, even though perhaps maybe my views aren't the ones you might see on LinkedIn. But when I have conversations with people across Australia on this, and we have deep and open conversations, these are the questions that people ask. So if I can sort of be a spokesperson for some of those views that maybe aren't as prevalent in mainstream media or LinkedIn, well then so be it.
So be it. No, I think it's that's beautiful, and that's what we're in terms of what we're trying to elicit from when we talk to people on this this podcast in particular is about getting rid of the hype, being human, and telling the truth about what's actually happening and what people are actually experiencing with the tech. So I think couldn't have asked for a better way to kick off our 2026 with our 2025 year in review. So I think I'll thanks very much for your time, Brook, and look forward to bumping into you around Canberra or in the nearest Virgin Lounge as we travel the country crisscross.
Absolutely, Andrew. No, thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure. Great questions, great discussion, important topic. Thanks to our listeners for tuning in, and I'm sure you'll hear more of Andrew and his team throughout the year. But as for Brook Dixon and Delos Delta, thank you once again. We look forward to working with you and all your friends in 2026 and beyond. Have a nice day.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Brooke. Talk to you again soon.
Bye for
Cheers,
now.
mate.
Thanks,
Bye.
Andrew.
That's it for today's episode. I hope you found the discussion interesting and insightful. And if there's anything in there that you want to explore a bit more, please drop us a line and we can dive in a little bit further. We're really trying to help organizations sort of cut through the hype and just see actually what are people using AI for. And as the guests in the episodes that we've gone through today said, yeah, AI is now pervasive. So it's kind of everywhere. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting 2026, and who knows? I'm really looking forward to fast forwarding to 2027 and having a look back to see whether we're how close were our predictions, were we on the mark, and how things have moved. So until next time, thanks very much for listening in, and I'll catch you then.